There comes a point in every deep relationship, especially when one or both people have been broken, where love and fear must learn to speak to each other. Not argue, not shout, not silence one another, but truly speak. Because fear doesn't vanish just because love grows. Sometimes it grows louder, because now there's more to lose. Now the stakes are higher. Now the quiet joy of daily life feels almost too good, too soft, too stable. And in that comfort, something ancient stirs. This can't last. It might come without warning, a sudden mood, a moment of doubt, a question asked with too much hesitation. Are you still happy with me? And before you can answer, they've already pulled away, just a little. Not because they want to, but because fear got there first. And fear doesn't ask permission. It simply arrives, carrying every wound, every pattern, every unresolved goodbye. This is where old stories begin to rise. Stories that were never rewritten, just tucked away. Stories like, people only love me when I'm useful. If I get too close, they'll get tired of me. If I need too much, I'll be abandoned. If I let them in too deep, they'll leave. And even if your love has been steady, those stories are rooted in memory. And memory doesn't ask if it still applies. It just repeats until someone interrupts it. You might notice they become more reactive or more quiet. They overanalyze small things you say. They watch your tone like it's a weather report. They search your face for signs of shift, not because they doubt you, but because the last time they felt this safe, it didn't end well. Safety, to them, is sometimes mistaken for the start of something dangerous. That's the trauma speaking. And your love, gentle, present, true, must learn how to sit with that voice. Not silence it, not fight it, but sit beside it and say, you're not wrong to be afraid, but you're also not alone anymore. This is the dialogue of healing. Not one that promises no more fear, but one that learns how to hold fear with kindness. You might say, I know you're scared I'll leave when things get hard, but I won't walk away because we're uncomfortable. I want us to walk through it together. Or, you're allowed to need reassurance. That doesn't make you weak. Or even, I hear your fear. I just want you to know I'm not going anywhere. These aren't speeches. They're anchors, placed gently in stormy water. I once heard of a couple, Ava and Grace. Grace had lived through emotional abandonment. Whenever things felt too close, she pulled away. Ava, raised in a home of over-communication, didn't understand it at first. She'd chase Grace with questions, desperate to solve the withdrawal. But eventually, she learned something vital. Grace didn't need answers. She needed space with presence. Not distance, not fixing. Just someone who could say, I know you're scared. Take your time. I'm still here. That change. Because now, Grace didn't have to defend her fear. She could speak it, and Ava could stay, not above it, but with it. That's the love that lasts, not the one that avoids discomfort, but the one that can say, we both carry fears. Let's not hide them. Let's learn their names. Let's let them speak so they no longer scream, because what's unspoken doesn't disappear. It burrows, and love Real love creates space where even the hardest truths can be voiced without losing connection. You'll have to be honest too, not just about their fear, but about your own. Because even the one who stays gets tired sometimes. Even the steady one has questions. Even you, with all your patience, carry your own quiet ache. So speak it, not as an ultimatum, not as guilt, but as truth. Say, sometimes I wonder if I'm enough for you too. Or, it's hard when you pull away. I want to give you space, but I also need closeness. Or, I love you, and I need to feel loved in return. Can we talk about how we both show that? This too is love, not sacrifice, but shared vulnerability. Fear, when met with honesty, becomes softer. It begins to transform, from a wall into a window, from a scream into a whisper, from a silence into a conversation. And in that space, something remarkable happens. The past no longer drives the present. Love does. Real love. Not the kind that promises perfection, but the kind that says, I know your fear, and I still choose you. You'll start to see them respond differently too. When fear speaks, they'll begin to pause, to breathe, to ask, is this real or is this my past talking? They might catch themselves mid-reaction and say, I'm sorry, that wasn't fair. They might start saying, I'm scared, instead of pushing you away. And that is healing. That is new dialogue. That is intimacy, not built on certainty, but on shared courage. Some days it will. Two people, both carrying histories, both trying to speak clearly through old noise. But it gets easier. Not because the fear disappears, but because the love grows stronger than the silence around it. Because now, when it shows up, you recognize it. And instead of retreating, you lean in. You say, I see you. I hear you. Let's keep talking. And that's all fear really wants, to be acknowledged. So it doesn't have to control everything anymore. Love and fear can coexist. But only when they learn how to speak. Only when both people agree. We will not let the past make decisions for us. We will listen, but we will not follow. And when that agreement is made, the relationship becomes something more than comfort. It becomes That's when you know the foundation is real. Not because fear is gone, but because fear no longer has the last word. Love does. And it speaks, not in declarations, but in presence, in small, daily reminders. I'm here. I'm listening. We're okay. Even now. Especially now. Every love story speaks a different language. Not the one you inherit, not the one you're told, but the one you build, word by word, moment by moment, breath by breath. Especially when you love someone who's been broken, you don't rely on old scripts, because those scripts were written in survival, in self-protection, in trying to avoid pain more than seeking joy. So now, together, you must learn how to write something new, something that belongs only to you. This language might not have elegant sentences. It might not be fluent at first. It might begin as a touch on the arm when words feel too heavy, as a deep exhale shared in silence, as the simple act of showing up, on time, every time. But slowly, you'll find your rhythm. You'll learn what I'm fine really means in their voice. You'll hear the difference between "I need space," and "Please don't walk away," you'll come to understand that "I'm tired" sometimes translates to "I need you close, even if I can't explain." And they'll learn your language too. The way you go quiet when you're overwhelmed. The way you fold the blanket when you're unsure. The way you clean the kitchen when your heart is anxious. This language won't always be romantic, but it will be real, and in its authenticity lies its power. Because intimacy isn't built in the grand gestures. It's shaped in the details, in how you both begin to notice each other's inner world, not to control it, but to respect it, to make room for it, to say, "I see the way you speak, even in silence, and I'm listening." It may take time, especially if one or both of you grew up in places where feelings weren't spoken or needs were met with shame. You might stumble, use the wrong words, read a moment incorrectly. But the beauty is this: you're not aiming for fluency, you're aiming for connection. And every misstep becomes a doorway to deeper understanding if you're willing to stay curious, not defensive. If you can say, "That didn't land how I meant it. Can we try again?" Or, "I don't fully understand what you need yet, but I want to. Teach me." That's how your language is built. Not in perfection, but in persistence. I remember hearing a woman named Celine speak of her partner, Cam. Cam had lived through neglect, emotional silence so loud it became the only language he knew. When they first got together, Cam rarely spoke in conflict. He froze, shut down. Celine, who came from a household where everything was expressed loudly, didn't understand at first. She thought silence meant indifference. But over time, she learned to listen differently. Not just to Cam's words, but to his presence. She noticed how he placed her keys where she wouldn't forget them. How he stood closer when she seemed down, even if he didn't know what to say. That was his way of speaking. And when she began to mirror that, offering space without pressure, affection without demand, Cam began to speak because he no longer had to translate his pain into someone else's dialect. He could speak from where he was and know she would meet him there. That's what you're doing too. You're meeting each other where you are, not where you wish to be, not where some book says you should be, but right here, now, with the vocabulary you've earned through presence, through repair, through staying. You're saying, "We might not know every word, but we know how to listen." And that is fluency of the heart. You'll begin to build rituals from this new language, your own ways of reconnecting after distance, your unique signals that say, "I'm here," without needing grand statements. Maybe it's a hand placed on the small of the back when one of you feels lost. Maybe it's a shared playlist that plays during quiet dinners, anchoring you to something familiar. Maybe it's the way you look at each other across a room and know what the other needs without speaking. These are not cliches because they are yours, built not from fantasy, but from effort, from trying again, even after missing the mark. Love isn't about always knowing the right thing to say. It's about creating a space where the wrong things can be said and still you stay. It's about saying, "I didn't understand you today, but I still love you. I said that with tension I didn't mean to. Can I try again? I know you're learning to speak your heart, and I won't rush you." This is the language of real love. And when it's shared, it becomes your safety net, the place you land when fear rises again. You'll also begin to notice that your inner dialogues change, that when fear speaks in your mind, what if they leave? Your love now answers gently, but what if they stay? That when old patterns rise, pulling away, shutting down, you'll now pause and remember, this love isn't like the last, because your new language has rewired something deeper. Not just how you relate to each other, but how you relate to yourself. Now self-compassion speaks a little louder. Now softness is no longer foreign. Now love feels less like a risk and more like a rhythm. Some days, the language will falter. You'll misread, you'll assume, you'll forget the new words and revert to the old. That's okay, because the beauty of a language you've created together is that you both know how to come back, how to say, that wasn't me at my best, how to hear, I felt hurt, without defensiveness, how to apologize not just to make peace, but to make meaning. That's fluency too. That's intimacy that doesn't just survive misunderstanding, it transforms through it. And maybe, someday, you'll look back on the beginning of this journey. The hesitation, the miscommunication, the fear. And you'll marvel at how far you've come. How once, the idea of being truly understood felt like a dream. And now you speak a language no one else quite understands. But you do. You and the on. And that is more than enough. Because in the end, love isn't about finding someone who speaks the same language. It's about finding someone willing to learn yours and helping you find the words you never knew you needed. It's about co-creating a dialect of tenderness, of nuance, of truth, and saying to each other over and over again, I hear you, even in your silence, even when you stumble, even when fear forgets how to speak. I am listening. I am learning. I am loving you, in our language, always. Every love story, no matter how quiet, eventually meets the world. And when that love involves someone who's been broken, when it's delicate, hard-earned, carefully nurtured, meeting the outside can feel like a storm against stained glass. You've built this thing together. From silence, from patience, from mutual repair. But now, other voices enter, and they don't know what you've carried. They don't see the layers beneath the surface. They only see what they think they understand. Sometimes, it's family. A comment made at dinner, a glance that lingers too long, a question that feels innocent but lands like judgment. Don't you think you're moving too fast? Wasn't he divorced? She seems complicated. They don't mean harm. But harm isn't always loud. Sometimes it arrives in subtle tones, loaded with assumption. And suddenly, the person you've loved so openly begins to close again, because they've felt this before, this questioning of their worth. This implication that their history is too much to carry forward. And even if they don't say it out loud, you'll feel the shift. The way they stop meeting your eyes when others speak. The way their body folds inward just slightly, like an old habit resurfacing. This is where you must protect what you've built. Not defensively, not aggressively, but intentionally. With presence, with quiet courage, by saying when necessary, "We're not perfect, but we're real." Or, "She's more than her story." Or simply, "This is who I love, and I trust the path we're on." You don't need to explain everything, but you do need to stand beside them, especially when the world begins to question what you already know to be true. Other times, the challenge isn't people, it's memory. Something in the air shifts. An old friend resurfaces, an old partner reaches out, or maybe a familiar place brings back too much, and you'll see them retreat, not from you, but into themselves. They'll carry memories they don't want, but can't quite leave behind. And in those moments, your love becomes shelter again. Not because they're falling apart, but because the world reminded them how it once did. And your steadiness becomes the difference between spiraling and surviving. I once knew a couple, Andre and Joe. Joe had lost someone years before. A sudden accident, a grief that rewired her world. When she met Andre, she never thought she could love again. But she did, slowly, gentle. One spring day, they walked through a park she hadn't visited since the loss. She froze, mid-step. Her breath caught. Andre didn't ask questions. He didn't push her to keep moving. He just sat on the nearest bench, waited, held her hand. Later, she said, "That's the moment I knew I could build a future with him, because he didn't rush me through my past." That's how you hold space when the world intrudes. You don't try to erase the shadows. You let them stretch and stay. And you say, "This moment doesn't change what we've built. I'm not afraid of what came before. I only care about what we're creating now." This kind of presence, it rebuilds confidence. It teaches them they can face the world, not by pretending their past doesn't exist, but by knowing it no longer defines their worth. Sometimes, the world won't be cruel. It will simply be loud. Work stress, financial tension, health concerns, family obligations. And in the noise, the quiet intimacy you've cultivated might feel far away. You'll both feel stretched, tired, disconnected. And that's when the real test comes. Can love survive ordinary chaos? Can it hold its shape when nothing is going wrong, but everything is simply hard? The answer isn't found in escape. It's found in re-anchoring. You pause. You breathe. You say, "Let's take 5 minutes and just sit together." Or, "I know everything's hectic, but I miss us. Let's protect a little space." These aren't dramatic, they're micro-adjustments, tiny threads that keep the fabric of connection from unraveling. And they matter more than you think. Because brokenness doesn't always return as collapse. Sometimes it comes back in quiet neglect. And love must be loud enough, gentle enough, to say, "I still choose this, even when life gets loud." You'll also notice moments when your partner becomes quiet after being praised publicly. Not because they don't appreciate it, but because public attention still makes them flinch. When you've been judged for your story, admiration can feel suspicious. Love, to them, was once something that turned, that came with a price. So even good things can bring discomfort. That's not ingratitude, that's history. And when you understand this, you don't stop sharing their goodness. You just make room for their response. You say, "You don't have to perform joy. Just know I'm proud of you." Or it's okay if this feels overwhelming. I'm with you either way. In time, the world's voice becomes less powerful. Not because it changes, but because your love becomes louder inside. Because your shared language becomes a shelter. Because you've created something strong enough to bend, to flex, to breathe, even when it's pressed against. You stop seeking validation from others. You stop needing everyone to understand. Because what you have isn't built on approval. It's built on truth. One day, someone might say, "You two are so lucky to have found each other." And you'll smile. But deep inside, you'll know, this wasn't luck. This was work. This was choosing again and again to speak with kindness, to stay when it was easier to run, to listen when fear raised its voice, to hold on when the past knocked on the door, to say, we are not the sum of what hurt us. We are the builders of something new. There's a moment in every journey of love when something shifts. You don't notice it at first. It doesn't arrive with ceremony or grand realization. It arrives in the quiet. In the morning, you don't check your phone right away because you already know they're thinking of you. In the way your hand reaches for theirs, not out of habit, but because it feels like home. In the small moments when you laugh together over dishes and realize you're not trying to hold on to love anymore. You're living it. For someone who's been broken, this is a subtle but extraordinary threshold. Because at the beginning, love felt like something fragile, something to protect, to test, to question. But now, it's something integrated, not a separate event in the day, not a heightened emotion, but a presence, woven into how they move, how they rest, how they hope. It no longer lives in the question, will this last? It lives in the understanding. This is part of who I am now. You'll start to notice that love no longer takes energy to hold. Instead, it gives energy. It's the breath that grounds them after a long day. The laughter that breaks up the tension. The quiet presence that doesn't ask for performance. They don't brace anymore when they hear, "We need to talk." They don't panic when you're quiet for a few hours. They don't double-check your tone for hidden rejection. Because now they know you speak love in the pauses too, in the breath between words, in the space that no longer feels empty, but full of trust. This is where the work has led you, not to perfection, but to peace, to mornings that begin with comfort instead of caution, to nights where falling asleep doesn't mean letting their guard down, but simply resting. To the moment they say, almost without realizing, "I don't remember what life felt like before this." And you'll smile, because you know exactly what they mean. Not that life was worse, but that now it's shared, lived together, breathed in unison. I once heard of a man named Theo. He had survived a difficult breakup that left him believing he was too needy to be loved well. For years, he tiptoed around affection, held back his joy, softened his opinions. Then he met someone who didn't flinch when he was honest, who didn't shrink when he was emotional. And slowly, love stopped being something to navigate. It became something to relax into. One day, while folding laundry beside her, he laughed and said, "I never thought I'd find someone I didn't have to apologize to for just being myself." That's when he knew. Love was no longer something he chased. It was something he lived. This is what happens when love takes root. You stop measuring it, stop monitoring it. You simply exist within it. And it exists within you. Not in dramatic moments, but in the fabric of daily life. In shared playlists, in grocery lists, in socks that always find their pair because someone noticed. In texts that say, "Don't forget your scarf," not because they worry you'll forget, but because they want you warm. And you'll change too. You'll stop needing constant confirmation. Because love now speaks in actions too familiar to question. You'll stop fearing small missteps. Because you've built a relationship where mistakes don't end things, they deepen things. You'll stop seeking a spark every day. Because you've learned the real fire lives in the embers. Steady, quiet, warming everything around it. Sometimes others won't understand. They'll ask, "Aren't you bored?" Or, "Isn't it too calm?" But that's because they still equate intensity with intimacy. You've discovered something better: presence. Not performative passion, but real attention. You've built a love where silence doesn't mean disconnection. It means comfort. Where routine doesn't mean stagnation. It means trust. Where ordinary isn't a death sentence, it's a blessing. You'll still have hard days, arguments, misunderstandings, stress, but they no longer feel threatening. They feel human. You'll disagree without fearing you'll be abandoned. You'll cry without fearing you'll be seen as weak. You'll ask for what you need without fearing you're asking too much. Because now, love isn't a contract based on conditions. It's a commitment born of care, a living thing that grows with each act of honesty, each act of grace. And that grace, it will become your rhythm, your way of moving through the world. You'll stop needing to protect your softness. You'll begin to share it. Because now you know, softness doesn't mean vulnerability to harm. It means strength in knowing you're safe. And safety doesn't mean you'll never be hurt again. It means you're no longer bracing for pain all the time. You've learned that love, when real, stays. Not in spite of hardship, but through it. You'll start to plan things together without fear. Trips, big M, not as tests of the relationship, but as expressions of its presence. You'll start saying "we" without flinching. Start imagining years ahead, not as fantasies, but as quiet hopes. Not because the future is certain, but because now, even if it shifts, you know how to shift together. And that's all you need. One day, someone will ask you, "How did you make it work?" And you'll think of 100 small things. The patience, the late-night conversations, the tears, the hands held without words. But what you'll probably say is something simple, like, "We didn't give up when it got hard." Or, "We kept showing up, even when we didn't know how." And that will be the truth, because this love wasn't made in a moment. It was made in many. Day after day, breath after breath, presence after presence, until it stopped being something you tried to hold and became something that held you. There's a beautiful shift that happens when love no longer exists just between two people, but begins to radiate outward. At first, it's subtle, barely noticeable, like warmth seeping through the cracks of a once-shut window. But it spreads, from the way you speak more gently to strangers, to how your partner's presence gives you more patience with a difficult coworker, to how you both begin to carry yourselves in the world, not with armor, but with ease. Because when love is secure inside, it doesn't need to be hidden or defended. It simply is, and that presence, that quiet steadiness, becomes a kind of offering, a ripple effect, a whisper that says, "This is what's possible." You'll start to notice that people feel different around you, not because you've changed everything about yourself, but because your energy no longer holds so much tension. You're not scanning the world for threat. You're not performing safety. You found it. And when you walk with someone who's helped you heal and who you've helped in return, you move through the world differently, more open, more forgiving, not naive, just whole. There's a kindness that returns to your voice, a slowness in your movements, a softness in your eyes, not because life has stopped being hard, but because your heart has stopped needing to be hard in response. This is the quiet work of real love. It softens not just the one who receives it, but the one who carries it. And slowly, it spills into everything. You'll find yourself noticing things you used to overlook. The tired cashier who forces a smile. The friend who masks exhaustion with jokes. The neighbor who waves every morning, never expecting a response. And because you know what it means to be seen when you're used to being invisible, you begin to see others more. Not out of obligation, but out of empathy. Love expands your capacity for presence because you've learned what it means to be held, and now your instinct is to hold space for others too. I once met a woman named Karen who told me that after years of heartbreak, she finally fell in love with someone who didn't try to fix her, but simply stayed. Over time, she began volunteering at a shelter, not out of saviorism, but because she understood what it felt like to be told, "You're not broken, just bruised." She said, "When you've been healed by someone's gentleness, it makes you want to be gentle with the world." That's what real love does. It doesn't just fill your cup, it overflows. You might notice that your partner becomes more open too, more willing to reach out, more available to their friends, more confident in their ideas, because they are no longer moving through life in survival mode. Because your love is no longer just a refuge, it's become a foundation. And from there, they can begin to build outward, to grow into the person they always were before fear told them otherwise. You'll watch them laugh more, take risks, stand taller, and you'll realize you didn't just love them back to life. You helped remind them of their light. And now, they're shining, not just for you, but for the world. You too will reflect differently in the mirror. You'll see someone who chose love even when it was hard, someone who stayed, someone who didn't let fear dictate the terms of their heart. And that pride? It's quiet, but it's real. Because choosing to love someone who's been broken isn't always easy. but it is always worth it, not just for what it gives, but for who you become in the process. Together you'll start dreaming differently, not just of vacations and houses, but of impact, of legacy, of how your love might echo beyond just the two of you. Maybe you write letters to your future selves. Maybe you mentor someone walking through grief. Maybe you simply become known quietly as the couple who makes others believe that love, real love, is still possible. Because in a world that so often shows only the highlight reel, your love becomes the quiet, behind-the-scenes story people feel safe around. Not loud, but true. You might find that people start confiding in you more, telling you things they haven't told anyone, not because you have answers, but because your presence feels safe. That's the mark of healed love. It teaches not just the one inside it, but those who brush against it. It says, here, love didn't come easy, but it came honestly, and we chose it every day, even when it hurt, even when it asked more than we thought we had, and we're better for it. I heard once of a couple who, after years of quiet healing, began hosting monthly dinners. Nothing fancy, just food, music, and a place to belong. Their guests varied, friends, neighbors, even strangers, but every single one left feeling seen. One guest said, "I didn't expect to cry in someone's backyard tonight, but the way they looked at each other, it reminded me what kindness can do." That's love, extended. Not forced, not performed, just lived in full view and gently shared. You don't have to change the world. You already are, by loving well, by living differently because of that love, by choosing slowness in a rushed culture, by choosing patience when hurt flares up, by choosing presence instead of perfection. And those choices, they ripple. More than you know. Eventually, your story may become one you tell others. To a niece afraid of heartbreak, to a friend recovering from betrayal, to a child one day asking how you knew you were in love. And you'll tell them, it wasn't a moment, it was 1,000 quiet ones. You'll say, we didn't fix each other, we learned how to stay. You'll whisper, it was hard sometimes, but it was always good. And they'll listen. And maybe, just maybe, they'll believe in love a little more because of you. This is the final gift of loving someone who's been broken. It starts as healing, becomes a relationship, grows into partnership, and finally turns into presence. Not just for each other, but for the world. A reminder that people are not ruined, that stories don't end at heartbreak, that love is still possible, still real, still worth it. Every love leaves something behind, not just in memory, but in shape, in language, in who we become because of it. And when you've loved someone who's been broken, truly, gently, completely, you don't just change them. You change yourself. And together, you shape something that lasts far beyond the days you share. This is the legacy of deep love, a way of being in the world that never fully fades. Even if circumstances shift, even if time moves forward, even if the love itself softens into something different. Because the effect of love, that kind of honest, patient, healing love, doesn't disappear. It lives on. in how we touch others, in how we speak to ourselves, in how we hold space for strangers. You may never write a book about it. There might not be a photo that captures it perfectly, but you'll feel it every time you choose to pause instead of push. Every time you say, "I'm listening," instead of rushing to fix. Every time you tell someone, "You are not too much," and mean it. That's legacy. That's the echo of what you built. They will feel it too, even if they never say it out loud, even if life pulls them in different directions one day. They will walk into the future with parts of themselves they reclaimed because you stayed, because you waited, because you loved without needing to rescue. They'll carry that forward into the way they parent, into the way they partner, into the way they forgive themselves after a hard day. And that is no small thing. That is generational. I once met a man in his 70s who said the greatest love of his life lasted only 5 years. Not because they didn't love each other enough, but because life required them to grow in different ways. And yet, 50 years later, he still made her favorite tea every Sunday, just for himself. He said, "She taught me what it felt like to be seen. That never left." That's legacy. Not possession, not permanence, but presence that lingers long after the moment has passed. When you love someone who's been broken and they begin to heal, you are not just part of a relationship. You become part of their return to self. You help them remember they were never unworthy, never too late, never too far gone. And that memory, it becomes a compass. Long after words are forgotten, long after the body changes, that inner knowing, I was loved, even in my most fragile state, becomes an anchor for every storm that follows. And you become someone who no longer fears emotional weight, who doesn't shy away from complexity, who knows how to sit beside someone's silence without needing to fill it. That is the gift they leave with you. A sharpened capacity to hold space, a deeper empathy, a stronger tenderness, a heart that is more honest because it has walked through the fire of another's pain and stayed open. This is not martyrdom. It's growth. It's what happens when two people choose not just to love, but to change through love, to become more aware, more careful, more curious. This is the quiet transformation that love, real love, creates, not just while it lasts, but long after. Even in the smallest acts, it endures. The way you respond to a crying child in a grocery store, the patience you have when your friend cancels plans, again, the softness you offer to yourself on days when everything feels like too much. Because now you know, people aren't always broken when they seem distant. Sometimes they're just carrying a heavy story, and you've learned how to hold stories with gentleness, with grace, with time. This legacy doesn't need a stage. It lives in kitchens, in handwritten notes, in long car rides and Sunday morning silence. It lives in how you open your arms when someone doesn't know how to ask for comfort. It lives in how you no longer flinch at tears, because love, the kind you gave and received, made those things sacred. Someday, if you're lucky, someone will look at you and ask, "How did you learn to love like this?" And you'll smile, because you'll think of all the nights you doubted, all the days you almost walked away, all the times you stayed, not because it was easy, but because it was right. You'll say, I was loved once by someone who was learning to trust again, and loving them taught me everything I needed to know. And maybe that person is still beside you. Maybe you've grown old together. Maybe you've learned how to disagree with kindness, how to sit in silence without fear, how to find joy in repetition. Or maybe life took you separate ways. But even then, the legacy remains in both of you, in how you move, in how you forgive, in how you hope. Because healed love is never wasted, even if it doesn't last forever, even if it doesn't fit the timeline others expect, even if it doesn't look perfect on the outside. Its mark is permanent, not on the timeline, but on the soul. And so, as you look at the life you've built, or still building, you'll see its fingerprints everywhere. In the softness of your voice, in the way you never rush someone who's hurting, in the way you now believe in your own worth, because love didn't just find you, it transformed you. And that transformation, that is what endures. That is what gets passed down. That is what shapes the world. One heart at a time. There is a moment, quiet, often unnoticed, when love stops being something you do and becomes something you are. It's no longer about what you say, no longer about what you prove. It becomes how you move through the world, how you respond to anger, how you hold disappointment, how you breathe when someone doesn't understand you, and you choose not to fight. This is when love becomes more than a relationship. It becomes a presence, a spiritual choice, a way of being. You don't wake up one day knowing this. It's a slow unfolding, a gentle loosening of the grip you once held on control, outcome, expectation. You realize that love doesn't need to be measured to be real. It doesn't need to be explained to be valid. It doesn't need to be reciprocated in every moment to be worth offering. Because now you love not out of fear, but out of wholeness, out of understanding, out of the quiet power that comes from having been broken and choosing to remain open. This love is not naive. It's not idealistic. It's deeply awake. It sees people as they are, flawed, afraid, sometimes distant, and still chooses gentleness, still chooses kindness, still chooses patience, not because it's easy, but because it's what aligns with who you are now. You have become someone who no longer reacts just to protect. You respond to connect. That shift, that's the mark of healed love. You might be with someone, or you might be walking alone. It doesn't change what you carry, because this kind of love is no longer dependent on a partner. It's a state of compassion that lives within you, a willingness to see the pain in others and not turn away, a softness that meets chaos without shrinking. You become the kind of person who can sit with discomfort, not just yours, but others, and still offer presence. You stop needing to be right all the time. You stop needing to defend your worth, because you know your worth now. It's not up for debate. I once hear. I used to think love was something I had to go out and get. Now I know it's something I can be, That stayed with me. Because that's what happens after the kind of love that breaks you open and then rebuilds you. You don't just learn how to give love, you learn how to embody it. In how you drive, in how you listen, in how you rest. This doesn't mean you become endlessly available. It doesn't mean you let people treat you poorly in the name of compassion. Boundaries are still sacred, but now they're no longer walls built from fear. They're doors made of clarity. You know when to stay, you know when to step away, and you do both with grace. Because now love is not just your offering, it's your compass. You'll notice that you no longer chase chaos. You don't find passion in volatility. You find it in peace, in presence, in people who don't make your nervous system work overtime just to feel wanted. That, too, is love. Choosing regulation over roller coasters. Choosing safety over sparks that burn out. Choosing people who are consistent, not because they're boring, but because they're real. Because they've done their work. Because they see yours and respect it. You'll start speaking differently. Less performative. More truthful. You'll stop filling space with words just to avoid silence. Because silence is no longer threatening. It's a resting place, a quiet confirmation that love doesn't need to be loud to be present. You've stopped seeking constant reassurance, because the love you carry now is not fragile, it's rooted. This kind of love changes how you experience time. You don't rush moments anymore. You don't fill every gap. You let things take the shape they need. You stop demanding immediacy from life because you've learned that good things, true things, take time. And more than that, they deserve time. You've stopped living in reaction. You've started living. Your definition of love evolves too. It's no longer tied to romance alone. You see it in a friend showing up after a hard day, in a stranger holding the door just a second longer, in the way you now talk to your younger self in your mind, not with shame, but with gentleness. That's love too, the internal kind, the healing kind, the everyday, everywhere kind. When love becomes a state of being, you begin to generate it. Even in hard moments, even in grief, especially in grief. You can love people who are no longer in your life, not with longing, but with gratitude. You carry their lessons, their laughter, their light, without needing to reopen old wounds. Because love, now, is not about possession. It's about permission. To let things go. To let them live inside you without pain. This is when you know you've become someone who can hold joy without clinging, sadness without drowning, connection without controlling. You've become someone who chooses love, not as a reaction, but as a way of moving through a world that is often confusing and hard. That choice, it's radical, it's quiet, but it shifts everything. You'll start to attract differently too, not because you've become perfect, but because people feel safe in your presence. Not judged, not evaluated, just welcomed. You listen differently now. You hold space. You don't try to fix what's broken in others. You just sit beside it. That kind of love, it heals without saying a word. Someday, someone might say to you, "You make me feel calm," and it will land deeper than any compliment, because you'll know that calm didn't come easy. It was earned through heartbreak, through honesty, through the long, quiet work of becoming someone who is love, not just someone who seeks it. And maybe, in a moment of stillness, you'll say to yourself, I didn't become this way by accident. I chose this. I built this. I allowed love to shape me. And you'll rest, not because everything is easy now, but because you are different. You've become a home for love, and homes don't chase storms. They stand, softly, steadily, open. And now you've arrived, not at an ending, but at a still place, a resting point between everything you've been and everything you'll continue to become. You've loved, you've lost, you've stayed, you've healed. You've seen what love can do, not just to hearts, but to identities, to timelines, to entire ways of being. And still, the world turns. Still, morning comes. Still, you rise. This is where you whisper the vow that needs no ceremony, no ring, no crowd, just your breath, just your soul, just this moment. It says, I will continue to love, even when I'm tired, even when I'm uncertain, even when the world teaches me fear. I will still choose softness, because now you know softness is not weakness. It is the strength to remain open, to keep your hands outstretched, to keep your voice kind, to keep your eyes searching for the good, even when pain has taught you to flinch. This is your vow, a quiet contract with life itself, that no matter how many you will not become someone who stops loving. You may not always have the same partner. Seasons may shift. People may come and go. You may find yourself alone again, not lonely, just solitary. But even then, this vow remains, not as a memory, but as a muscle. You've strengthened it with every hard conversation, with every act of forgiveness, with every moment you held your own heart and said, not this time, I will not close. That choice is your promise to yourself, to the world, to anyone lucky enough to walk beside you. You've become someone who knows how to rebuild, not because you enjoy falling apart, but because you've discovered something most people never do. Love is not something you wait to find. It's something you become. And in becoming, you no longer live in scarcity. You no longer believe there's only one kind of love that counts. You've loved deeply. You've been loved fiercely. And now, love is not a destination. It's the road, the soil beneath your feet, the breath in your chest. Even in heartbreak, you'll still believe in beauty. Even in loss, you'll still trust the return of light. You are no longer shaped only by what hurt you. You are defined by how you responded, how you kept loving, how you kept offering grace, even when it wasn't returned. Not because you're a saint, but because that's who you choose to be. Every day, quietly, deliberately. One day, someone might ask you, was it worth it? All of it? The risk, the ache, the time? And you'll smile, not because it was painless, but because it was true. You'll say, It taught me how to be more human, more whole, more present. Yes, it was worth it. And they'll see it in your eyes, that your love was never wasted, that no part of your tenderness was ever foolish. You'll watch the world move fast. You'll see people swipe through connection like it's nothing. You'll hear cynicism disguised as realism. You'll notice how rare stillness has become. But you'll carry a different pace. Not slower, just deeper, rooted, intentional. Because you've lived at the depth where real love breathes. And once you've breathed that air, you no longer crave what's shallow. You'll start to see love in places you once missed. In the way an old woman touches her husband's shoulder at the market. In the way a child gives their favorite toy to a friend who's sad. In the silence between friends who don't need words to feel seen. You'll see it everywhere. Not because the world has changed, but because you have. Your eyes have softened, your soul has opened, and now everything holds the potential to be sacred, to be connection, to be love. And if the day comes when fear rises again, when loneliness creeps in, when the old wounds whisper, "You're still not enough," you'll know how to respond, not with panic, not with blame, but with presence. I've been here before, and I made it through, and I'm still someone who loves. That steadiness, it's your legacy, your compass, your vow. Because in the end, love doesn't need to be loud to last. It doesn't need to be dramatic to matter. It just needs to be true, offered freely, held gently, and lived fully. You are living it now, not waiting for it, not chasing it, just being it. So here in this final quiet place, you can rest, not because the work is done, but because you are finally moving from a place of peace, from knowing that love is not a race, it's a rhythm. Not a prize, but a practice. Not a destination, but a way. Your way. And if someone finds you one day, heart weary, hope thin, eyes tired from searching, you'll be ready. Not to save them, not to fix them, but to see them, to hold out your hand. And say, "I've been broken too, and I still chose love. You can too, and I'll walk beside you while you remember how." This is your quiet vow, not just to someone else, but to life, to the part of you that still believes, still softens, still sings, still reaches, still stays. And as long as that part remains, no matter where you go, no matter who you're with, you are never lost. Because love now is not behind you. It's in you. It is you, always.